started, so I'm very excited for this one especially. I'm going to begin by introducing Mr. Hassan Abdou over here. So Hassan is a founding partner in Z Sports, an award-winning multidisciplinary sports academy based in Egypt. He is also an experienced CEO, private equity investor, entrepreneur, and mentor with over 30 years of work experience. In 2005, he led the buy-side team in the largest LBO in European history, with the purchase of Wind Telecom of Italy for over 17 billion euros. Wind Telecom was later restructured and sold as part of a larger telecom asset. From 2011 until 2017, he was an independent PE investor, doing various deals in the Middle East, Europe, and in the US. He originally began his career in 1991 in project management with ExxonMobil, and later as a management consultant at BCG in New York. His tenure as Chief Investment Officer of EFG Hermes Private Equity brought him back to the Middle East, where he has resided since 1998. Hassan has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Pennsylvania and a bachelor's degree in finance from the Wharton Business School, as well as an MBA here from HBS. Please join me in welcoming Hassan and the rest of the panelists. Hassan has also agreed kindly to facilitate and moderate discussion in addition to being a panelist, so he's going to go forward with introducing everyone else as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Hesham, for that introduction. Just out of transparency and full disclosure, Hesham is my son, so but thank you very much, Hesham and Jumed, for a fantastic conference. It's been really a magnificent couple of days for me, and I'm very honored to be here. I'd like to introduce the two people of my partners here on this panel. I think it's going to be a little bit different than some of the other panels that you've seen. We hope that we can meet your expectations and maybe give you a lighter side of some of the things that's going on in the Middle East and not just a lot of the negative things that we're seeing. So on my right, I have Farida Osman. Farida Osman was only 5 when she dreamt of becoming a professional swimmer. Fast forward a few years, and Farida moved to the United States for college, leaving everything behind to pursue her lifelong dream. During the summer of 2011, Farida won her first international medal at the World Junior Swimming Championships in Lima, Peru. She was crowned world champion in the 50-meter butterfly in a world junior record time. With her gold medal, Farida placed Egypt for the first time in history on the medalist table. Farida specializes in sprinting swimming events, 50 meters, 100 meters butterfly, and 50 meters, 100 meters freestyle. A true princess at heart, her swimming style is a blend of power and grace. She is now a 3-time Olympian, 2012, 16, and 2021. And a 3-time world bronze medalist in the 50-meter butterfly. She was recently crowned African Swimmer of the Year and is currently training, I understand, as we speak, for the Summer Olympics in Paris this year. So please welcome Farida Osman. On Farida's right, we have Mohammed Wasfy. Mohammed has 20 years experience in football, not only as a player, but as a coach, and now working with the Right to Dream, which we will learn more about. Mohammed, also known as Mishu, is that true? Okay. Mishu, works to support all the activities of Right to Dream Academy in Egypt and also globally. Intrigued by the holistic approach that Right to Dream embodies within all streams of work, he believes development, education, and character are integral pillars for football development. With his beliefs, Mohammed enjoys seeing the continuous development of students and players to go through their time at the academy and helping them overcome the challenges that they may face in the real world. So please welcome Mohammed Wasfy to the stage. Before we get into our topic, I just wanted to say something very quickly. And I know I said we would talk about the positive things, but just something that struck me over the last couple of days. We had some very fantastic speakers, some very heartbreaking stories, but there is hope, and there is a hopeful side that we all need to look at. But when I think back almost 30 years, so I think 28 years ago, I was a student at HBS, And it was, I think, October or September of 1995. And they were talking about the Palestinian two-state solution. And they were very close, what we thought at the time, very close to having an agreement. And Harvard invited two people to come and present their ideas and discuss with the students. The first one that came in October was Yasser Arafat. And I was lucky enough because in my class was the daughter of the Harvard University president. She took me into a very closed, very small group. I think we were 10 or 12 people, to have a closed session with Yasser Arafat and hear his views away from the media. And it was very inspiring and a fantastic experience. A month later, Yitzhak Rabin was supposed to come and do a similar thing at Harvard, and he was assassinated during that time. And he never ended up coming, and I think history has shown what happened after that. But how it impacted me specifically is me and a very close friend of mine who is a Palestinian Jordanian. We decided to do a field study in Palestine, and our field study professor was Michael Porter of the business school. Michael Porter, in the late 80s, I think 1989, published a book called The Competitive Advantage of Nations. Competitive Advantage of Nations, if you've read it, you understand what it is, but we try to apply that to Palestine. So what are the resources, whether they're natural resources or in the case of Palestine, human capital mainly, that they can use to become and emerge as a new nation in a new emerging market. We got a letter from Michael Porter saying we are Harvard students. We took a flight to Tel Aviv, crossed the border into Gaza, and started our interviews with the PLO and some of the key people there. Fantastic experience. As we were there, there was a bomb that went off in Dizengoff Square in Tel Aviv. So it became very tense, and Gaza was on high alert. So I called my dad and I said, okay, we're in Gaza, this is the situation, what do I do? So he called his friend, childhood friend. I'm sorry, I'm taking a little too long, but I'll get to the point. So he called his childhood friend, who was the Egyptian ambassador to Gaza, and he said, you know, call him, here's his number, he'll help you. So we called him, and I said, I can't remember his name now, Uncle, my name's Hassan Abdou, you know my father. He said, yes, of course, Hassan, how are you? How's your dad? All of this. I said, fine. He said, I said, we're here in Gaza. So the phone went silent, and he said, you're what? I said, yes, we're here in Gaza, we're doing this field study, me and Ahmed, my friend, and he said, stay right there. Where are you? I told him where we are. He came, I remember, to the Adam Hotel on the beach in Gaza, and he said, you need to leave right away. There's going to be an Israeli invasion, and they're going to cross the border, and you need to leave immediately. So he took us at 8 p.m. to the Rafah border, and we tried to cross to get into Egypt. We crossed the Palestinian side, we went to the Egyptian checkpoint, and they wouldn't let Ahmed cross. Ahmed, he had a Jordanian passport, he's born in Nablus. They said no, he's going to join that group of people on the side. There were maybe 200 people sitting on the ground. They're going to be shipped back, God knows where, to up in Gaza or Jordan or whatever. He's not crossing into Egypt. So I said, well, I mean, I can't do that. I can't leave my friends and go back to Cairo and leave him here. We don't know where he's going. Anyway, it took us about 4 or 5 hours, and finally, with after a lot of intimidation and a lot of threats, they got us a car in the middle of the night to literally smuggle us out of Gaza and back into Cairo, where we arrived at around 7 a.m. the next morning. So, I guess the point of all of this is, it's sad that 30 years later we're still here talking about the same thing. We're still talking about, is a two-state solution possible or not? While yes, there's a lot of hope, we've disintegrated. If you look at what's happening in Gaza today, it's going to take us another 20 years just to get back to where we were before. But there is hope, and in any case, with the people we've seen over the last few days, there's resilience, there's what's the word? Kifah. There's people want to struggle and they want to do the right thing. Anyway, we want to switch gears now to sports. We just want to say, stay strong, stay together, and we will make a difference. We will, as the ambassador said, we can make a difference, and we being mainly the younger youth of the world. So, we're going to start now. While Hassan asked me to be a moderator, I'm not a professional moderator, so please excuse me if it doesn't go that great. But in any case, I've been very blessed to have several careers as an engineer, private equity, investor, consultant. But one of the things I like most is what I'm doing now, among other things, which is investing in sports and investing in the youth sector, mainly in Egypt, but expanding throughout the Middle East. I enjoy football. These days it's more watching than playing, but also coaching as well. So with this, I want to switch gears to Mohammed. Mohammed, tell us a little bit about Right to Dream and how that works.
Thanks, Hassan. And I just want to say I'm happy to be here and excited to speak about Right to Dream and the things that we've done in the past 3 years in Egypt and in the future, inshallah. And speaking of hope, and I think one of the main pillars within Right to Dream is education. And I believe through education, a lot can be achieved, and it's something that is much, much needed in Egypt. I want to give a brief history on Right to Dream. It was actually founded in 1999 by a scout from Man United. His name is...
Presentation up? Could you put the presentation up, please? No, not the video, the presentation. Sorry, this is part of the problem of not being moderators.
I can go on about the history until the presentation is up. And so Tom Vernon, he's the founder of Right to Dream. It started in Ghana in 1999. He was a scout for Man United, and while living in Ghana, he was able to see that there were a lot of talented young players that needed the opportunity to be coached and educated. And he started with 16 kids in his backyard, and eventually that grew, and in 2004 they moved into a bigger facility. Fast forward to 2010, and what they were doing was recruiting talented kids, developing them, and they only had one pathway, which was an educational pathway to the US. So a lot of those kids were provided with scholarships in the US, where they got education and played football. In 2016, they acquired a club in Denmark called FC Nordsjælland. They play in the highest level in Denmark. And it was through that they were able to provide pro football pathways for some of the top talented players that have come out of Ghana. They were developing the same thing in Denmark. In 2021, the Mansour Group, under the leadership of Mr. Mohammed Wasfy, who actually a couple of weeks ago received his knighthood. So he's Sir Mohammed at the moment. And they've been wanting to invest in sports. They could have bought a club in the Premier League. However, they wanted to invest with a different intention, and that was to create social change within Egypt. They wanted to help Egyptians with providing them opportunities and giving them a platform and the tools to actually develop and grow. So basically, I was tasked as CEO in Egypt in January of 2021 to build the academy and also to build the infrastructure of the team that would help in recruiting our students. So we have about 15 regional organizers throughout the country, from Alexandria to Aswan. And with our scouts, we go into the city, we go into the towns and the governorates and the villages, and we go into the areas where a lot of kids have been marginalized and a lot of underprivileged areas to look for talent. These kids don't have the opportunity, don't have the means to go and visit clubs in Cairo because it's far away, they don't have the money to go there. So we go all the way to them and we see if they are talented. After that process, and once they're in, we have a committee that decides on who comes in and who doesn't. And that's when we provide a scholarship, and we are totally committed from age 10 or 11 until age 17. This is basically our academic demographics of where our kids have come from. We have 45 boys at the moment, and it doesn't show here on the screen, but we also have 9 girls. We believe in that we need to be progressive in the girls' piece as well, and I'll discuss this later. And this is basically our model, where we scout at age 10 to 11, and the ones that we bring in, where they're on full scholarship, they come into a residential academy until age 16. And then there are 2 pathways. One is we call it the US pathway, which is the educational pathway, where we have partners. We partnered up with about 13 schools in the US. So we end up having kids that will come to the US, get their education, high school education, and then university. And if they're good enough, they can still join the MLS. If not, they could end up working within the Mansour group. They have about 60,000 employees in 100 countries. Then there's the football pathway, which is the pro football pathway. We've got our pro clubs, one in Denmark, and we recently acquired an MLS franchise in San Diego, which will be competing in 2025. We've also got a club in Egypt. The women's team play in the Premier League, and the men's play in the 3rd division, and we're looking to get the team promoted to play in the Premier League. This is basically what we've achieved in the last 25 years with the different pathways and opportunities that we provided for most of our student athletes that have come out of Ghana and Denmark. Inshallah, soon, starting this year, we will have 2 kids from Egypt. Actually, one from the government of Suez, from a small village in Suez, and another one from Minya. They got accepted into a couple of schools here in Connecticut, and they will begin their educational pathway in the US. Over the course of the years, we've had 146 academy graduates that have become pro footballers across the world, and we've had 89 academy graduates that have joined universities across the USA. We actually have a student athlete. He currently plays for the San Jose Earthquakes in MLS. His name is Hosseini Bouda. Hosseini Bouda is from Burkina Faso, and he was scouted by our head scout, Jeremy Sithal. He came into the academy, only spoke French. In 3 months, he learned English. He went on the educational pathway, went to Millbrook School in New York, graduated from Millbrook, went into Stanford. He actually went to an Ivy League school, did really well, and then he got drafted into the MLS. This is one of the success stories, I believe, that inshallah, some of our student athletes from Egypt would be on a similar pathway. An important point here that how do we fund this? The players that will be going on a pro football pathway will end up in some of our clubs and within the group, but mainly the ones that end up in Denmark. They play for a couple of seasons and then they go on and they get sold to some of the top clubs in the world. I don't know if you guys follow football, but we've got players like Mohammed Wasfy, who plays for West Ham. He came into Right to Dream at age 11. We've got Ernest Nwama, He was at right to dream age 11, graduated, went into our club in Denmark, and got sold to Lyon for 30 million euros. And over the last 3 years, we sold players for over 100 million euros. And this money gets funded back in so that we continue with scouting young players, and it just keeps going. Due to our football elite development program, we've had players represent their countries at the World Cup. We're top 10 in the last World Cup. We've had 10 players participate in Qatar 2022, of which players were from Ghana and Denmark. Our plan is, inshallah, in 2030 to have at least 5 to 6 players representing Egypt in the World Cup. We're also amongst the world's best at producing players. The number here is 49, and those 49 have played in the top 5 leagues in the world, so we're also ranked in the top 12. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. We're going to come back to a lot of the things that you touched on later on, but I want to switch gears a little bit. So today, there's about 70 Egyptian athletes playing Division I and Division II NCAA here in the US. The number usually ranges between 60 and 80, depending on the year. Egypt produces some of the top athletes, for example, in squash. So 5 of the top 10 world ranked squash players are Egyptian. 10 out of the top 20 are Egyptian. We also are good at producing athletes in basketball, judo, weightlifting, swimming. So let me ask Farida, you've broken many barriers and set records as an Egyptian and Arab athlete. What were some of the specific challenges you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Hey, hi everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Hesham. Thank you, Hassan. Thank you I'm happy to be here with everyone, but I think like me being an Egyptian athlete, but also like an Egyptian swimmer, also being a woman, being Arab, being Muslim, obviously these are all little barriers that I personally had to go through. So I pretty much spent my whole life in Egypt. Like I went to CEC for high school. I know we have a lot of CECs here. I graduated in 2013, and then I got recruited to swim in the University of California, Berkeley. So I swam in Berkeley from 2013 to 2017. And obviously, like every phase of my journey, I had to go through difficulties. Like it's normal, any journey you go through, there are so many ups and downs, it's not always up. But I think like the downs are what made me who I am today and who I am as a person, but also as a swimmer. So like I would give you examples of like in high school, the difficulties that we had to go through was just like balancing school and sports. Because I know in Egypt sometimes there isn't really like communication between the sport industry and like school and education. So pretty much it all falls back on the athletes. And I remember my days in CEC were just like I had to wake up at 5 a.m. because I had practice from like 5:30 to 7:30 a.m. And then I had to go straight to school from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. in CEC. And that was in Naidi, and like I went to Nedi Gizira, so that's in Zamalek. So this is also another factor of like traffic and like trying to be time efficient and manage my time. Like I remember my parents would like prepare food for me from like CEC on the way to Nedi Gizira just so I can have time to like eat and like have energy to start practice again. I would do fitness from like 4:30 to 6 p.m. and then another swim practice from 6 to 8 p.m. So pretty much I would go home every day at like 8:30 or 9 p.m. And I think like as an athlete, that's just really hard to like start school that late, you know, because like I'm all day out of the house, like when am I supposed to study kind of thing. So that was like definitely really hard, and I know a lot of like people in high school who do sports like struggle with that. So this is something I had to like deal with and like had to really learn on my own, and obviously with the support of my family, like they helped me so much throughout my journey, and that's why I was able to like do both. And this is when I decided I wanted to go to the US for swimming, because like I wanted to choose a school that was like really good in academics and really good in swimming, and that's why I chose the University of California, Berkeley, because obviously academically it's really good, but they have one of the best like sprinting programs, because I swim the 50 and 100 meter freestyle butterfly. Yeah, so this is when I went to the US, and obviously like as a freshman, like being an Egyptian Muslim woman swimmer, like in the US, like I remember on the team, like people would ask me the weirdest questions of like, oh my God, you're from Egypt, like, do you go to practice with it, like on a camel, or like stuff like the weirdest things, like, oh, do you have an H&M in Egypt? I'm like, wow, you guys really don't know anything like outside of the US. But also like my freshman year, I remember my coach was also not aware of like any other Egyptian swimmers, and she was a very tough coach, and I think like she made me so much stronger as a swimmer, but also as a person, because like throughout my high school career in swimming, like I was the only competitive one, and I was the only one winning like gold medals. But I know when I went to Berkeley, like there are so many others like as good or even better. So I always had to like compete with the other girls. I had to always be on my A game. And I think that was also like adding another barrier of like I had to prove myself over and over again, because my coach didn't really know anything about Egyptian swimming and like how I grew up pretty much. And then like once I proved myself, like I think this is when I started getting respect from the coaches and my teammates of like, okay, yeah, she's good, she can stay, kind of thing. Yeah, and then after that, I continued to stay in the US because I wanted to train for the Olympics, and this is why I'm staying like in Berkeley up until now, to train for the Olympics as a professional swimmer. But also like being a professional athlete and having that as like my main job kind of thing also has obstacles. So, like whenever people ask me like, what do you do for a living? So I'm like, I'm a professional athlete. And they always like have this confusion of like, is this a real job? Like, what else do you do? And I'm sorry, like I really don't have that much time to do other things. Like pretty much swimming is pretty much a real-time job. Like I said, we start from 5 a.m. and go home like really late. So this is something also like, because we don't have that many professional athletes who are women and Egyptian or even like Arab, so having to be one of the first ones was hard, because like you kind of like trail that path for other people, and hopefully we have a lot of like squash players, you know, we have like tennis ons, like we have so many Arab, Egyptian, or like women athletes in the Arab region who are doing a really good job. So hopefully we can inspire more female athletes at a young age, whether it's Right to Dream or whichever academy, just to keep going, and hopefully we can all be like good role models for them to pursue sports and at the international level.
Okay, yeah, fantastic. Because of an unfortunate event that happened at a stadium where some of the fans got violent, there's limitations on how many people can attend sporting events in Egypt. So ticket sales that would generally go to the teams are also very limited. So the question, Mohammed, how do you make money in this type of environment?
That's a tough question. In Egypt, I think for teams to make money, the ecosystem needs to change completely, and it needs to be the private sector need to be more involved. There needs to be less security, like as you were saying, Hassan. I think it was until 3 years ago there were no fans allowed in any of the games, and then a couple of years ago they allowed 500, and recently they moved it up to 20,000, and that's because of crowd violence. It's very, very difficult to change what we have at the moment, and the only guarantee to make money is to actually invest in youth. And that's where clubs and academies really need to recruit top talent and develop the talent from a very young age, so that they could sell those players abroad. That's the only way you can make money in Egypt. And on a higher level, most clubs actually are on minus 200 and 300 million Egyptian pounds losses every year. The only way they can compensate for some of that is through a player trading model. So the best players will get sold to the top teams in Ahli and Zamalek, or possibly even Zed. But that's the only way. We're a player trading model dependent at the moment because the ecosystem doesn't help other sources of revenue.
So other than trading players, for example, at Zed we have two lines. So we have the pay-to-play model, which is if you have a kid, a boy or a girl who wants to play football, you pay a monthly fee and they join the academy and they get trained and they play. We also have the youth sector, which Mohammed alluded to, which is based on tryouts. So it's based on how good you are, and if you're accepted, then you're part of the team. To give you an idea on numbers, because we try to go to the governors or go out to outside of Cairo and get the kids in the areas that they are and bring them in. But for example, last year we had 20,000 kids come to tryouts. 20,000 kids, and in the end we will take 5 or 6. Not 5 or 6,000 or 5 or 600, we take 5 or 6. That's the capacity that we have. We have in total about 250 kids in the youth sector, spread out over, I think, 12 teams. So the turnover per year is 5%. So it's 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 kids per year. New kids come through the system. The program in total is about 300, depending on the year. But that gives you an idea for the pent-up demand that's out there. So kids and parents alike see that sports is a way for them to get out of the life that they're in, to have a better opportunity in the future. And in a place like Zed, for example, we signed 2 deals internationally. One with a club called Vitória in Portugal, and one with Aston Villa in the Premier League in the UK. Aston Villa is a sister company of ours. We own it. And our program there is basically they come and they scout directly from Zed, as well as from other teams in Egypt and around the world. But we have a partnership with them where we share facilities, we share best practices in terms of coaching, nutrition, rehabilitation, and how to take kids who are uneducated, don't speak the language, and prepare them for a potential career in sports abroad. Surprisingly, the investment is not that big. The initial investment in building the clubs and the facilities is somewhat big, but the ongoing expense is not that much. It's, we're talking single-digit $1 million a year, so $3, $4, $5 million a year for the youth sector at Zed. To give you an example, Mohammed touched on this. Nadi Ahli, which is the biggest, most popular football club in Egypt, they spend about $15 to $20 million a year total. That's their budget. So again, the numbers aren't that big when you consider that a player like Mohamed Salah, for example, actually I'm not sure what his numbers are, but he's what now?
Yeah, he earns about 20 million.
20 million, okay. So he,
pounds, British pounds.
yeah, so he's bigger than our most popular football team in Egypt. We'll get back into some of the economics, but it's not just about making money, right? It's about adding back and improving the community, the individual athlete, and the social dynamic. So we're just going to show a quick video here of some of the success stories. Can you play the video, please? Sorry?
It's like the advertisement today.
Yeah. So this is Right to Dream. Zed is very similar.
Rear movement built around character, purpose, education, and football.
A tribute to a passion that runs deep within us all. And a stage where raw talent meets boundless opportunity. Here, talent unite by a shared passion from every corner of Egypt. And untapped potential becomes a champion of tomorrow. But we're not just aiming for more skills. We are nurturing dreams, inspiring wisdom that transcends the pitch, and shaping not just players, but the leaders of tomorrow. We are Bright to Dream Egypt Academy. We define the future of Egyptian football.
So similar to Right to Dream, Zed has, in addition to the collaboration with Aston Villa that I mentioned before, we work closely with the Sawiris Foundation, which is a charitable organization in Egypt. We have 40 kids who are fully sponsored. They are housed in dorms. They're educated, fed, educated not just school education, but also how to deal with life in general. And we also teach vocational training in case they don't succeed in football, that they have something to fall back on. So far, we've only been, this is our third year. We consider it a success already, but time will tell exactly how good this is. If we measure the impact of sports beyond just winning medals and becoming rich international athletes, even though that is important. And just to take a step back, we've already seen it in a way that is, I think, very unique. So traditionally, athletes would go abroad, they would assimilate into the foreign culture, they would potentially make a lot of money if they're a success, and maybe come back. Very few have had an impact on the societies that they go to. Mohammed Salah, I think, is a very good example. This is a guy that has changed the way the Liverpool fans look at Egypt. He's a fantastic ambassador, and I want to get back to you to talk about that in a minute. But whether it's how he plays on the field, or how he represents Egypt, or his fasting in Ramadan, or him scoring a goal and then kneels on the ground, used without art, it's something that we didn't really see before. And rather than the response be a negative, racist response, even though that does happen a lot, the response is you see a lot of Liverpool fans, these white British guys, who they imitate and they praise him and they sing songs about him. So these guys and these men and women are heroes for us in our countries and in our region. So Farida, I'd like to ask you, as an athlete, what are your measures of success? What are your KPIs other than bringing home the gold, inshallah? What do you consider?
I think, honestly, being an athlete, yes, you care about the medals, yes, you care about the achievements, but just being an athlete, I think that lifestyle and that path for you just teaches you so much about yourself as a person. You learn a lot of new skills that could help you eventually after you're done with the sport. I think, for example, for me, just being good at time management, or eating healthy, or sleeping early and waking up early, at the same time just taking care of my body, taking care of my mental health. I think when it comes to sports, there are so many small factors that make the huge difference at the end, from someone being a bronze medalist to a gold, even last to gold. These are all the small little details that athletes tend to really focus on so they can become at the elite level. But I think personally for me, how I measure success is, yes, I want to be a great swimmer, but at the same time, it's important to me to be a good person. I don't want to have a gold medal, but be rude or mean to other people. I think I always like to lead by example, especially for the young kids. They just get to see you everywhere, social media is everywhere. So I think being a good person and leading by example, hopefully we can inspire a lot more to, whether girls or boys, football, swimming, any other sport, just to go through that path, because it gives you so much more than just medals and achievements, and just, it pretty much you become a good character, good person. Yeah, it just builds who you are, kind of thing.
Maybe you can talk a little bit more about women's sports, and if you can, women's team sports. So Traditionally, because of viewership or lower viewership, they don't attract as much dollars or advertising revenue, and therefore women athletes are paid much less than men. Maybe for the first time ever, I think this year, March Madness in the US, the women actually achieved much better viewership than the men. So but with the exception of that, and being realistic at the same time, what do women need to do, or what needs to happen for this balance to change?
I think honestly it's been improving a lot more. Like I would say like for the past 5 years, like the viewership has increased. Obviously it's not like football, because like football is definitely the #1 sport, whether in Egypt or in the world. Like it's even like the World Cup is a lot more than the Olympics, even though the World Cup is one sport and Olympics is multiple sports. So again, it always comes down to like how much people watch that sport. But unfortunately, I think like with swimming, because like it's not really the funnest sport. Like it's kind of boring, to be honest. Just like, back and forth, like you barely see who's winning because we're all so close and like literally just fractions of a second. But I think like I said, like for the past few years, like it has been improving, and I feel like we've been hearing a lot more women who are in sports who are like winning medals, like doing great achievements. And I think like the more women just focus on what they're doing and being able to compete at the international level and the elite level, I think hopefully we can inspire others to do the same. So I think the more people represent, the more likely, hopefully, like being optimistic, like more viewership in the sport.
Hassan, can I add to what you just said? I think it's our duty as people, like leaders in the Arab world, especially in the sports sector, to push that agenda. We have to push and support women's sports, whether on an individual level or teams. And we have a women's team in Egypt, Toot FC, that competes in the Premier League. And what we've done, and we hope that other teams follow suit, is that we've made sure that every player on the team has a professional contract. They train 5 times a week. It's a professional setup, and that has elevated the standards, and it's also improving the ecosystem. One of the things that we need to do as leaders as well, and it's something that I've done with the Minister of Youth and Sports. Our team has reached the Egyptian Cup final that will be played on May 8th, and we asked him that we want this game to be played at Cairo International Stadium. We want fans to come out there. We want at least 5,000 to 10,000 to go out and watch a final of women's football. We want to make sure that it's normal, it's okay, and we need to support it. I'm at every training session, I'm at every game, and I'm trying to show this is the way we need to support.
Can I just add something to that? I think also like the media plays a big role in that, obviously, and like how you market yourself and yourself as a brand. With social media right now, like I feel like a lot more women are like showing more what they're doing in their sport, because like the more you see, the more you normalize it, and then the more like the media will pay attention to you and start recognizing you as an athlete. So I think like definitely there's still a lot more improvement there in the media, but I think we're moving in the right direction because we start seeing it more, whether on social media or on TV, so it has become more normalized.
And also culturally. I mean, I know when I was growing up, to become an athlete, that wasn't a career, right? That's not something that you do. You go to school and you become an engineer or a doctor or something like that. But obviously now it's different, and the culture is, first of all, becoming much more outgoing, much more participatory. You see gyms opening up, and for the last 20, 30 years in Egypt, there's a gym everywhere. People are working out, they're getting fit. Sports now are legitimate avenues for career development, and kids look to become professional athletes. Mohammed was kind enough not to mention that his women's team is doing better than ours. But that is a testament to what they're doing at Right to Dream. I know we're short on time, so I just want to touch on a few more important things. At ZED, for example, we also try and use the latest state-of-the-art technology in how we train. So whether it's using data analytics or GPS trackers on the kids, or even, I'm told this works, but I don't know. DNA testing to find out, what this particular kid should be eating and not eating, how their rehabilitation should go, what exercises should they be doing specific to that body type and that kid. So whether it's nutrition or, generally putting science into the sport. How do you guys use technology in your youth sector?
I mean, if you want to train the kids and develop them in the right way, you need to be up to date. You need to be you need to be up there. So technology plays a huge role in the development, and we're talking about GPS trackers. We're talking about data analytics. There's sports science to manage training load throughout the week. When we work on, we have like something called like a periodization cycle where we plan the training for 6 weeks on the technical side, but we also do on the performance side, which is managing the load. And you need technology in that space to constantly improve. So we're always out there, and we're lucky enough to be part of a global group where we exchange best practices. So if they have something that is at the highest level in Denmark, we use that in Egypt if it's going to be in San Diego, and that's how we exchange. But no doubt, technology plays a huge role in the development of young athletes.
Coaching. How does the coaching staff, your coaches in particular, what are the good things about it? What are the necessary things about it? How does a good coach make or break an athlete? And I say this on several dimensions, if you could address them. So at ZED, for example, we have coaches that we brought in from abroad. Not because we don't necessarily have good coaches in Egypt, but it's because we tend not to have good systems in Egypt. So these guys are coming in to establish the framework and the systems. They train our coaches, they get them up to best practices, and then hopefully in 3 or 4 years, our coaches will advance to that. We have some of the best doctors as well. What we don't have are psychologists, and I'm wondering mental health and athletes' ability to cope with all the stresses from a psychological perspective. How does mental health impact performance, you specifically and athletes in general?
Well, I think just talking about personal experience, starting with the DNA, we actually do it a lot because it tells you so much about yourself. Like simple examples of caffeine, how do you tolerate caffeine? For me, before my race, I have to drink coffee, but at the same time, I always have to time it right because I have high tolerance of caffeine, so I can take it 30 minutes as opposed to an hour, so it could hit. So all the DNA tells you so many things, what do you do, how do you handle pressure, or how do you handle stress. DNA literally, I really encourage it because it tells you so much about not only about what you eat, but you as a person, how you can be the best athlete or the best version you can be. But hitting on mental health, I think it's definitely something very important when it comes to performance, because yes, we take care of our bodies, yes, we train every day, yes, we work hard, but I think we reach a level all athletes do that, but how do you become from being a good athlete to a great athlete? And this is where I feel mental health plays a huge role. I can talk about personal experience. I think in my Tokyo 2021 Olympics, I have not had the best performance at all. It was really hard for me. And obviously, leading up physically, I was in the best shape possible, but mentally, I was just literally, I feel I was burnt out mentally because COVID, and it got postponed a year, and it was just adding a lot of challenges. And then in Egypt, especially, the media just pretty much pushed a lot of pressure on athletes the year of the Olympics. It's literally the Olympics, I understand it is the biggest competitive, when it comes to swimming or a different sport, but at the same time, just like did not have a good experience, and I think like mentally I was down, and I feel like with the media and the social media after, like I got a lot of backlash, a lot of hate, and like people were so mean, and people were judging my performance, and pretty much like that defining moment of my career, like they just forgot about everything else that I've done. They just focused on the negative, and they were really mean. And this is when mentally I was like, you know what, I need to do something about this. Like I think I need to work with a sports psychologist, because like athletes go through so much. Like there are so many behind the scenes things like people are not aware of, you know, but like obviously like everyone else doesn't see that. But I think mentally, like we have pressure and expectation. Like once you win a medal, it's an expectation to like repeat it or even do it, like be better at it. But like sadly that's not how sports is. Like you win some, you lose some, like it's just part of life, you know, it's normal. And I think this is when I started working with a sports psychologist after my Tokyo 2021 experience and all of the backlash that I got, but I'm definitely stronger because of it, because I just learned to like take out the noise kind of thing. Like as long as you're doing what you're doing, you're training hard, you're pretty much like focusing on your dream and your goal, I think everything else will eventually work itself out. Like I think mentally, if you're strong and if you're focused, I think your performance is pretty much gonna boom. And this is what happened to me like the year after the Olympics of 2021. Like after being beat and like sad, like I was actually contemplating of being done with swimming, because I just felt like everyone was pretty much defining me from that performance, and it was just like really hard mentally. But I told myself like this is not how I want to end my career, like I know I'm better than this. It was just simply a bad swim, nothing more than that. And I think like with working with a sports psychologist, like learning how to navigate that and like having tools, I feel like a lot of athletes like really need that mentally. I know like a lot of athletes in the world are like hitting on that. Like Simone Biles is really talking about my mental health right now, and I think like more people are starting to talk about it. And I think also something else, like in the Arab world, we don't really encourage mental health. Like it's something we're not really talking about, and I think that's something we need to improve on big time, because it really makes a huge difference. And then the year following up the Olympics, I had World Championships in Budapest, and this is when I really took care of my mental health and broke 2 new African records and like had pretty much the best race. So just to summarize, like mental health really makes an athlete from being good to like great, because you get to deal with all the pressure and expectation and just like pretty much achieving the best version you can be in the sport.
Well said.
Thank you.
We want 3 medals, okay? No pressure, but we want 3 medals this year. We'll get to the questions. I just want to wrap up and just say, so sports, from my perspective, in my humble opinion, sports is the great equalizer. It's something that everyone can relate to. It's a very positive thing. It's very nationalistic. It's also individualistic. And it's something that, but it's not going to happen by accident, right? In places like Egypt and throughout the Middle East, I think it needs to have a 2-pronged approach. There has to be a top-down approach. There has to be a vision for what we want to do, whether from a governmental level or more preferably from a private sector level. This is what we want to do. This is where we see investments in sports in our country and our athletes going. But also a bottom-up. So whether it's the clubs or the families or the individual players, how do we become the best at what we do? Getting the right agent, getting the right coaches, joining the right teams, looking for the long term, not just looking to, well, I want to make $100,000, I'm going to be traded to this team, and then that team is not going to invest in that person enough. So, yeah, let's get to the questions because we're running out of time. Please, go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for organizing this incredible panel. And Farida, hearing your story has been really inspiring and empowering for all of us. My friends and I are really into adventure sports, and one thing we've been talking about lately is how we wish we would have started sooner. But as Muslim and Arab women, we just didn't grow up in environments where it was encouraged. And so I think having a vision and an image of someone that looks like us doing really cool things goes a long way. but there's still a lot of institutional and infrastructural changes that need to be made to reduce that barrier to entry. And I think you started talking about how making it easier with schools to understand what it means to be an athlete, or even having more inclusive training programs for coaches. So I wanted to see if you can touch on more tangible changes that can be made.
Yeah, I think like if we have to start with like at a young age, I feel like people, I'm going to talk about personal experience. Like in Egypt, like I only got attention or recognition after I went through the journey all by myself. Like they only started caring when I had the medals. But I think like starting at a young age and giving them the right, at a young age, like giving them the resources and the support, I feel like when you do it at a young age, the more likely you will have more champions. You know, so like just having people there around you like to support you, at the end of the day, it's like who you surround yourself with. But I think definitely we need to like start the support at an early age so we can have more medals and not the opposite where you like go through it all alone and then once you hit like the target, they start giving you attention and recognition. And I think like something else that is just, yeah, mental health is something we really need to talk about more, and I feel like I really started learning so much about it like the past few years. So I think just like, it's pretty much like the whole system, and this is what you touched on, like just having the whole system is like being a great athlete, eating right, sleeping right, taking care of your body when it comes to recovery, like sports psychology, just so you can take care of your mental health, and like having the education helps and support like all the athletes and not having be like a barrier that you also need to add on and take care on yourself, you know? So I think like all these small little things which creates the full system is what is gonna help the athlete just focus on what they're doing, and the rest is just gonna take care of itself, you know?
Thank you. Yeah. Hi, my name is Mariam. So I have two questions. The first question is for Farida. Farida, can you talk a little bit about what resources you didn't have when you started swimming, doing swimming in Egypt? And then my second question is for Hassan. Hassan, all we hear about is football, soccer, Abu Zamalek. Is there any plans to invest in other sports like swimming or like basketball, like tennis? I know we have a big squash team in Egypt, but what about the other sports that I think that we can excel in and kind of put Egypt on the stage?
Okay, so I think for me, like I said, like I think I was missing the whole system at a young age, just like going through that journey. I think in Egypt we do a very good job at like having a great coach and a great like fitness coach or a gym coach, a weight training coach, you know? But I think we're missing all the other little things that make the athlete from being good to great again. Just like, you know, taking care of your body, like recovery is a big part of being a great athlete. And yes, you work really hard. Yes, you like your muscles are sore, but what do you do to get better for the next day of practice? Like whether it could be like massage or like ice bath or like stuff you just do to recover. And I think like I was missing that a lot growing up, with also the addition of sports psychology, because mental health, we never really talked about it like in sports growing up. So I think like having both of these, just like the full system and focusing on mental health growing up, and like helping athletes not be nervous like when it comes to competition. Like this is just a simple thing. I think like I get a lot of questions like, how do you not get nervous before the race? And I'm like, no, I still get nervous, but I think I learned how to manage that. And I think we're missing that a lot in Egypt, because all we do is just like practice, but we have to focus on all the other small details.
And in terms of your second question, you're right, football is the number one, but that is more of a supply and demand thing. But from a investment perspective, we do have other teams in other sports. So in football, actually, we have, other than the boys and the girls teams, we have an amputee team where, you know, players are, so the goalie has an amputated arm and the players have an amputated leg. And, you know, this is something that was very, I don't know if taboo is the right word, but certainly overlooked. And it's one of the things that we promote. We have a basketball team. A lot of the big clubs in Egypt have basketball. Handball is very popular in Egypt. Zed doesn't yet have a handball team, but It's one of those things that we will promote. So there is investment across the board in several sports, but they are baby steps, right? So there's some realism involved as well. Yes?
Hello everyone, thank you so much for being here. As an athlete, I think this is really such a fascinating panel from all perspectives. So I have a couple of questions actually for Farida, and I'll make them quick and concise. As a female athlete who has clearly left her mark on the highest of athletic stages, what are your words to an Arab woman starting off in this arena? That's the first part. And then the second part is actually a combination of things, but you spoke about being a full-time pro athlete. Can you also speak to financing options for athletes in sports that are not as mainstream, such as squash, fencing, etc., who don't have the, I guess, like, it is a luxury to be able to do your sport full-time. And then also transitioning from ensuring that we have a sustainable pipeline, I guess, for athletes post their athletic career. So really embarking, especially with Paris 2024, which will unfortunately mark the end of many athletes' careers. What are your recommendations, or maybe some of your ideas to help people transition from the before to the after? So thank you so much.
Thank you. That's a really good question. I think just being an Arab swimmer, I think for me, I never really looked at it in like a barrier or like a constraint kind of thing. Like I know in our culture, we don't really encourage having female or like pro athletes. But I think for me, I had a dream, I had a plan, I had a goal, and I think just like focusing on that and being surrounded with the right people and the right support system, like I think I was fortunate enough to like be able to achieve that and pretty much like cancel all the noise. You know how they always say like just work hard and then like let your performance be the talking. Like I don't want you to like waste time on like what others are saying, because people are gonna talk no matter what. Like I realized that like in my Tokyo experience, just like people are gonna talk no matter what. But I think like as long as you're surrounded with the right people, have the right goals and have the right plan to achieve that goal, just I think having the right discipline, and this is something we also sometimes we lack in Egypt or like in the Arab world, like just to have the discipline to do that. But this is something you can definitely learn how to do on your own, and obviously it takes a village, so you need people around you who are also doing the same thing, have the same vision and the same mindset. So that's your first question, I hope I answered it. And then the second question, you were talking about just like I think being an athlete and then transitioning into the workforce. So I think for me, like this is why I feel like education is very important. Like this is where I encourage everyone to like not only focus on the sport, but also have a really good education. And this is why I chose Berkeley, because I studied marketing and advertising there. And I think like after swimming is done, like it's just a sad truth, like swimming is gonna end eventually, but what are you gonna do after? You need to have something to fall back on. And I think this is something I really want to do, is just like, even though this is what I studied, but also like going through that, like the marketing and the advertising of the sport, like I want to do sports marketing. And I think like, because football is such a huge like marketing scheme, and I think like, there are so many other sports who are doing as good or even better, but are not getting the right marketing and not the right representation. So I feel like this is something I personally want to do, and I feel like yes, you can become an athlete, but you need to find a passion of yours that you can start, planning ahead kind of thing. You can't just like switch off everything else in the world, because this is not how the real world unfortunately works. Eventually your sport is gonna end. So you need to find something to fall back on. And I think your last question was, sorry, can you remind me?
Yeah, actually that hit kind of both parts of my last question. And just an addendum to that, I think it's really interesting because certain regions of the world, we'll see like South Korea and like a lot of other Asian countries, they do have established pipelines to help transition their athletes from being athletes to being faces for different things for the government, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's really interesting in thinking from a sustainability standpoint, how can we really serve our athletes while they're serving us in afterwards.
I was just gonna add something on that. Like I think in Egypt, like just from personal experience, like the government or like the federations don't really help you in that transition. And like even financially, like you can't just depend on them. And I think this is where like the past few years, a lot of like businessmen or like companies have been sponsoring athletes, because they believe in their vision, they believe in like their goals and dreams, and I think like we're definitely moving in the right direction to like keep having that, because unfortunately we can't sustain without, you know, because like every sport is like there's a lot of costs. Like swimming, for example, like the racing suit that we wear is just $500, that alone, and we wear like $1 million. So I feel like this is just something that athletes need to not worry about, because like we just need to focus on our goals and our training. So like having the financial stability when it comes to sponsors like really helps, and I feel like this is where we need to encourage more moving forward.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm being signaled that we need to wrap it up, but we started late. We can do 2 more? Okay. So why don't the 3 of you just give us your questions all together?
Okay.
But
so
briefly.
Yeah. So briefly, the first, like 2 very quick. The first one's for Mr. Abdul Wasfy. So we see that nowadays there's been a lot of attention on the Saudi League and a lot of the top players. So is that something you consider for the youth to go there, or do you think that Europe is still a better option, even though the competition is much bigger? And finally, just maybe all 3 of you maybe could answer. Maybe more Mr. Wasfy, Mr. Abdou, as a man, like I'm Jordanian, every boy's dream is to play football. I would say, at least from my friends, 95%, if you ask them before the age of 12, is to be a football player. So how can you guys distinctively choose, or to choose who to invest in, knowing that the competition is much harder, or probably the players in Europe are much more talented for many reasons? For example, in the Arab world, or at least in Jordan, if you're going in a diet, like if you're on a diet for sports, it's just one slice of cake, nothing's gonna happen. We're not as, I don't know, منظمين. You're not really like promoted or helped, motivated by people around you to actually stay on this diet or sleep. So that's basically it. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think a bit in contrast to this question, I want to focus really on football in Egypt. I think me as a fan, I'm a huge fan, big athlete fan, and
we'll change that. You become a big Z fan.
Stop. But I think when we compare ourselves, we shouldn't compare ourselves with the West or the East or anything. But let's just stay in the continent for a second here. I think in 2022, what Morocco did in the World Cup was something incredible. And in 2023 was Morocco's greatest ever year for tourism because of that World Cup. And I think in Egypt, after 2012, or 2015, with the Zamalek massacre, something changed and something ruptured between the fans and the country. And I think that rupture stayed there and it will never change again, or it's going to take a lot of time. When I go to games in Morocco, when I go to games all over Africa, the big banner with us as Ahli fans is "Umur al-Ahli mawjood fi kull makan illa bayt." The Ahli fans are everywhere except home. So I want to ask, how can we champion change? How can we have all this investment and community development if, as I go to the stadium in Egypt, it takes me 3 hours? If I'm wearing a t-shirt with a 72 on it, I get it removed. If I can't go to the stadium sometimes because, there are dangers to it. So how can we champion change if fans, the core thing in football, are not allowed in stadiums in Egypt?
Hi, I'm Dima. I just have one quick comment for Farida that the 50-meter freestyle is like the best one to watch, and I'm a big fan, that's my favorite to watch. But my comment actually was related to this last comment. And can you just kind of touch on the significance and the impact of Morocco's run in the World Cup last year, and kind of the pride and the unity that it brought among the Arab world? Thank you.
So I'll touch on a few and then I'll hand it over to Mohammed. I know you have an opinion on this. The fact that the problems that you mentioned exist in Egypt is not, and you said it will never change. I disagree. I think it will change, and it needs to change. The problem with what you addressed, similar to other problems in Egypt, is that there is this fear by the state that they need to control certain things. So we've seen in every country in the world, when fans get out of control, what can happen. We've seen it get ugly. We've seen, I don't think there's a game in the Premier League where the English fans don't, get drunk and get rowdy. But in Egypt, they take it to the extreme and say, okay, well, this makes us look bad internationally, so the result is ban all fans from the stadium. Obviously that doesn't make sense, and that's not a rational thing, but that's the mentality of the people that we're dealing with. And this is just one item in a million different political problems that we have. But with people wanting to go back, with exhibition games being played, with the World Cup, the African Cup, sorry, not the World Cup, the African Cup in Egypt, and the number of people that went to the stadiums to watch the games. And yes, I agree with you, it's a nightmare. You go into Red Bull Stadium here, it takes you probably 6 minutes from the subway stop to your seat. And it takes 2 to 3 hours to get into Cairo Stadium. That's a problem, makes you not want to go. But I do think these things will change, and I do think as the government relaxes itself and gets more and more out of the private sector, these things will change. The first question, the first young man was talking about in the region, and this is a good thing or not. Well, I think 2 years ago, no one knew what the Nasr was, right? And now people know what the Nasr is. And I'm talking even in Egypt, we didn't know what it was. But it took Ronaldo to be, to playing in a Nasr for people to know what that is. The CEO of the Nasr is a good friend of mine. He used to be the CEO of AS Roma, and they hired him there. And we're looking to make collaborations with him to get our, kids from the youth sector to look at the Middle East as a potential outlet, not just Europe and not just the US. So I do think these are good things. I mean, they're not always noble reasons why they do it. You can argue there's a lot of sports washing, and that's why they make all these investments and get all these players. But at the end of the day, the end result is it's good for the sport, it's good for the country, it's good for the youth sector. Mohammed, I'll let you get.
I just want to answer, I think it was the first question on young players at age 12 dream of becoming football players or pro football players. You said that there are talented players in Europe. I disagree. I think in the Arab world we have very, very, very talented players all over. And I've been to Borussia Dortmund, and I've been to Ajax, and I've spent a week in both clubs, and I've watched their academies. And one of the things that caught my attention was that ages 10 to 12 or 10 to 13, I've seen much, much better players in Egypt. However, the problem is not only Egypt but across the Middle East is that they do not have a developmental mindset. It's not about developing the players. It's about winning games now, as opposed to Europe. They're completely structured and focused on developing those players. That's why at age 14 or 15, post-puberty, players in Europe go up, players in Egypt go down. And that's because they don't have the mentality of developing them and making them constantly challenged. One of the biggest problems in the youth sector in Egypt, and that's why we don't participate in the league, is that there's a lot of cheating. Kids not with real ages playing in teams. They should be, let's say, it's a U12 team, and you have 14-year-olds playing on just to win. So we need to cut out. We need to cut that out in order for us to really improve and develop our boys and girls, for them to give them a chance to become elite. And on Saudi, I think having Saudi as a potential destination for some of our youth players is definitely a good one. They've spent a lot of money, about I think $1 billion, just to upgrade all clubs and facilities for men's and women's team as well. So it's a good thing for the region and a good destination for other players across the region.
Do you want to comment on the Moroccan football team?
On Morocco, the success did not happen overnight. I don't know if you guys have heard of the Mohammed VI Academy. It was a national project that started almost, I think, 10 or 15 years ago. And a guy by the name of Nasser Largué, he's a Moroccan guy, worked for Marseille. He's currently actually working with the Saudi Federation to do something similar, where they've recruited all of the young players and they've developed them in the right way in terms of football at elite level, education, and they've given them games where they're constantly challenged, and that's the only solution to being able to develop the players. And a lot of the players have come out of Mohammed VI Academy, and some of them have gone on to play in Europe at a very young age. But they've had a plan, they put a plan in place, and they've gone about it, and that's why the success came after maybe 7 to 8 years. So it wasn't an overnight thing, and this is something that we need to do in Egypt. Other countries need to do the same, because I believe there is amazing talent in the Arab region.
Thank you. Thank you all for attending this panel. We really appreciate it. We'll let you go to lunch, but please join me in thanking Farida and Mohammed.